Alrighty. So, friends, one of the things that we do in the Spokane Sangha, and this is very traditional to the Buddhist practice, is we set an intention. Anytime we come into the presence of the three jewels, this is something in Buddhism that is fundamental to this practice. And the three jewels of Buddhism are the Buddha. The Buddha was a real human being, legend has it, who was able to awaken to the causes and conditions of his own suffering. And he understood what made him miserable in his own life well enough to really shift his life, shift those conditions, so that he always had access to peace and joy and happiness. And he spent 40 years of his life teaching about it. And those teachings have been handed down for thousands of years now, and we call that the Dharma. These are the collections of the teachings from the Buddha. That's the second jewel. And the third jewel, according to the Buddha, was the community, the Sangha. And the Buddha considered the Sangha a jewel because this is the place where we can really practice the teachings. This is the place where the rubber meets the road. So for many of us, we could practice the Dharma by leaving society, going into a cave, staying completely isolated and devoting ourselves to that study. And that's one way to understand the conditions of our own misery, our own habit, energy, and suffering. Or another way, I should say, and another way is to be around people. And not always just like-minded people, by the way. Sometimes we need agitators, stirrers, people that, kind of rub us the wrong way, because those activations let us know where our weak spots are in the Dharma. It's one thing to talk about compassion and loving kindness for all people until you encounter that one person that really pisses you off and you kind of secretly wish they'll fall flat on their face, which isn't a particularly loving, kind, or compassionate thing, so they become the teacher. So the Sangha is key to stirring our pots, letting us know where our stuff has settled below the surface. So we come into the awareness of the three jewels and we set an intention for our practice here. I recognize that we are here because we are all trying to understand our relationship to negative habit energy. Another way of saying that, a traditional way of saying that, is we are trying to stop being addicted to drugs and alcohol, maybe even sex, social media, food, anything that inhibits ourselves from living a magnificent life, what we were created for. In the Spokane Sangha, we call it negative habit energy, and it comes in many, many forms. And recovery is about understanding that habit energy, its causes and conditions. And this practice is to awaken to that fully with maturity, wisdom, and great tender care. So I'd like to share with you a sentiment of loving kindness. And I had a couple spill out. That's always a good sign. So I'll read two of those. But I have this little basket, and inside are all of these little pieces of art that various Sangha members have sent me, various things that I have made. And on the back, I write these little sentiments of loving kindness. And I'll share this one with you. And this one reads, "May you stay open. May you stay open." This is the one that I read yesterday, and this was made by our wonderful Sangha member, Sean C., who's here today. This little art piece, it says the word hope on it with an infinity symbol. And this one reads, "May peace be with me." And then the third one that jumped out of my basket was made by our wonderful Sangha member who's here today, Michelle. So, friends, may this be a lesson to you. If you send me any artwork, I will love it and I will cut it up in small pieces like this. So be sure, whatever you're sending me, you know Julia's going to cut it up and write sentiments of loving kindness on it. This one reads, "May you be your own caregiver and caretaker." May you be your own caregiver and caretaker. May peace be with me, and may I stay open. Welcome, everyone. This is Recovery Dharma. I'm Julia, and I get to facilitate this beautiful practice today. On Wednesdays, we read from a beautiful book called Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. This is the work of Shantideva, an 8th century Buddhist monk who, like the Buddha, he took the Buddha's message deep in his heart. And he decided for himself, I want to wake up from all the nonsense that I do in my life that causes me to suffer. I want to stop engaging in those habits, and I want to discover for myself how I can alleviate those habits, how I can change those patterns of behavior that cause me to diminish myself, sabotage myself, keep myself from the magnificence of this one beautiful, precious life. So he shared a story with his classmates, and that was shared many, many years, centuries, until somebody decided to write it down. And there are several interpretations of this book. So today we are going to read just a couple of verses. We're in the 4th chapter of this book, and the chapter is called Guarding Alertness. And I want to just begin with those 2 words, guarding alertness. So I encourage you to think for yourselves, what are some synonyms? What are some other words that come forward when the word guarding is spoken? For me, what comes forward are words like protecting, keeping safe, honoring. What does alertness mean? To me, alertness means paying attention, being aware, looking around. Sometimes when I'm alert, I can be hypervigilant, which isn't always a comfortable thing. So let's take a moment and just think about this chapter as guarding alertness. How do you stay awake? And I don't mean that literally. I mean that how do you stay aware? How do you pay attention to what's happening in your life? What we're going to read today, Shantideva is pointing us to the mind. How do you stay awake, alert? How do you pay attention to your own mind, your thoughts, your stories, your memories, your worries? And maybe you've never thought about it before. Would you look at that? There's a great book out there by Venerable Thubten Chodron. And the title is an old spiritual practice. And it's called Don't Believe Everything You Think. And this is really, really important on the journey of recovery, recovering our truest self from our negative habit energy. One of the habit energies we cultivate over time is negative self-regard. I'm a piece of shit is a common phrase. It's a common thought. I'm not worthy. I don't deserve nice things. I've made so many mistakes. I have so many regrets. I don't deserve healthy, happy relationships. Maybe there's a narrative in there that says, I've done so many terrible things, I may not even deserve to get better and to get well. This is a practice of opening the mind and just saying, would you look at that? Look at that thought. I wonder how it snuck in there and put down some roots and grew into this thorny, prickly presence in my mind, trying to descend and hurt my own heart. There are also thoughts out there that are encouraging, like, it's an amazing thing to come to a recovery Dharma meeting, a recovery meeting, period. The fact that you're prioritizing this time to take a look at yourself is an amazing act of compassion and care. I am compassionate and caring. And if you repeat that in your own mind, maybe you don't believe it. And isn't that a curious thought? Why is it that the negative is so much easier to believe than the positive? Something to explore. But don't take my word for it. Let's hear from Shantideva. Shantideva writes, Buddha, the able one, says, thus, all fears and all infinite sufferings arise from the mind. Who purposely creates the weapons that harm the beings in the hells? The hells refer to the hell realms of our own making. Hell in the Buddhist tradition is a place, it's a realm after this life, but it's also a part of this life. The hell realm is that cyclical habit energy that causes repetitive suffering. That, from a Buddhist perspective, is a hell. Shantideva says, who creates the blazing iron ground? From where do the tempting hallucinations rise? Hallucinations, in this instance, he's referring to distortions, delusions, the things we tell ourselves that are simply not true. Or maybe they're true, but we interpret them as a whole truth, which they are not. For instance, I'm a terrible person. Might be true, and not the whole truth. I've done some really unskillful things. I'm a really lowly person. Absolutely true. And still not the whole truth. The Buddha says that all such things come only from evil minds. Evil in this interpretation has a different connotation. Evil means unskilled. It means confused, ignorant. It means hostile, aggressive. aversive. Thus, there is nothing to fear within the three worlds that has not come from the mind. If completing the perfection of giving were eliminating the poverty of living beings, since hungry beings still exist, how could the previous Buddhas have completed that perfection? So in other words, Shantideva is pivoting a little bit and he's asking this question. Since people are still hungry and people have been practicing and they've become awakened, they've become Buddhas, that's all that word Buddha means, to awaken. If people have been awakened, why is there still poverty? Why is there still hunger? Why is there still greed and aggression and hostility? Even in the time of the Buddha, and looking at what's happening now. The completion of the perfection of giving is said to be the thought wishing to give everything to all living beings, together with the merit that results from that giving. Therefore, it depends on my mind. So, let's end with this. Thought wishing. Here's an example. If there are still hungry people after many have perfected the practices of giving, and yet hunger still exists, one thought could be, well, what's the point? Why bother practicing? If there are still going to be hungry people, if there's still going to be poverty, loneliness, murder, aggression, violence, what's the point? That's one extreme. On the other end is, the point is, how are you in all of this? What are your thoughts toward yourself? Are they insatiably hungry? Do you have a poverty mindset where there's not enough? Are you in a place where you are violent toward yourself? And I don't mean physically, I mean spiritually. Where you speak unkind words, where you have no patience for yourself, where you deny yourself compassion and care, where you abuse the body. On either side, the mind is the common thread. The Buddha says, find a place in the middle, somewhere in the middle. It doesn't have to be exact and it doesn't have to be stationary. And look at your mind. Own your thoughts. Get curious about your thoughts and how they become feelings. And then look at your feelings and notice how they become thoughts and how those thoughts turn into actions and reactions. And how those actions and reactions reinforce the thoughts and feelings. If you are governed by a mind that it views the world as unjust, and you are constantly seeking justice and fairness, you will find unfairness and injustice everywhere. And your actions will keep you locked down that way. If you are someone who is afraid of people who cannot be trusted, you will probably look for untrustworthy behavior and fail to explore your own habit energy of untrustworthiness. It happens in the mind. And so we have to open the mind, soften the mind. And when we are unskillful, to acknowledge that. I was unskillful in my speech just then, and I apologize. I reacted unskillfully, and I harmed myself and someone else. I will learn from that and not make that mistake, not repeat that action. That is an awakened mind. It's that simple and that profound. So let's take a moment and breathe as an act of practice and a skillful act of kindness to the mind and the heart. And we'll chant a little mantra to go with it. This is a chant of presence by Thich Nhat Hanh. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. Dwelling in the present moment, this is a wonderful moment. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. Dwelling in the present moment, this is a wonderful moment. It's that simple, friends. It's that simple. So let's do it again. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. Dwelling in the present moment, this is a wonderful moment. Right now, outside the doors of Soul Center, there are sirens going, fire trucks, ambulances, maybe police. And so I'd like to take this moment to extend some merit, some positivity. May all beings who are called to this emergency be safe, clear-headed, and direct. May anybody who is experiencing loss in this moment find comfort. May anyone who is injured find great care. May we take a moment to honor this precious human life. We'll end our practice today with a dedication of merit. And I invite you to take a noble posture. For anyone who's new to meditation, new to Recovery Dharma, a noble posture is an intentional way of putting the body in a very specific form. It's seated usually, so if you're lying down, I would encourage you, since we've been exploring guarding alertness, I would encourage you to come to an alert posture, which is seated. If you're sitting in a chair, sit up, maybe a little bit forward so that your back isn't leaning back. If you're sitting on a cushion, sit nice and tall. Maybe adjust your feet so that the belly can be nice and soft, the spine nice and straight. Roll your shoulders back so the heart is lifted and open. Take a moment to breathe and reflect that what you did today for yourself is actually also an act of enormous kindness and love for many others. There were nearly 50 people here today online benefiting from your presence here today. There were 12 people in Soul Center today. That combined effort creates so much goodness, so much positivity in a world where people are asleep to their lives, people who are filled with trauma responses that are aggressive and hostile, lonely and sad, people who are sleeping on the sidewalks, being ignored, people who are isolated and alone in their homes, nobody bothering to check on them, to offer an hour of service to mow their lawn, clean a window, check in and provide some presence and attention. There are so many things that we can do, small acts of kindness. Coming to a Recovery Dharma meeting is one. It's amazing. Take that in. What I did for myself positively affects many, many others. May you be happy and peaceful. May you be safe and protected. May your steps be full of peace, and may you learn to live with ease. Namaste, friends. See you next time.